Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the EDHRECast. And why is it so special? It's because we are talking about our free preview cards from Wizards of the Coast for the upcoming Ikoria Commander set. That's right, I said preview cards. It's not just one card that we're talking about today, not just two, we're talking about 3 new cards for Ikoria Commander. But before we get to them, I have to introduce my fantastic co-hosts. First up, the guy who will never stop making dad jokes, it's Matt Morgan.
Joey, if I poured root beer into a square glass, would I just have beer?
The square root of beer? That's very, very funny, Matt.
There it is.
Next, the guy who will never stop making the bad jokes. That's Dana Roach.
I've been trying to cycle every day, 10 miles or so, just to deal with kind of stress from being quarantined. And I'm like 4,000 miles from home right now and recording in Alaska. So I think I've been doing it wrong.
It's interesting that you mention cycle there in your joke,
isn't
Dana.
It?
Yeah, it's almost like it's a preview of things to come. We've got 3 preview cards here that we're going to be talking about. But real quick, EDHREC didn't just get 3 preview cards. We actually got 7 free preview cards from Wizards of the Coast. We're going to be talking about the 3 new ones here, but you can actually check EDHREC.com and look at the articles there because our resident Jeskai master, Angelo at the Jeskai on Twitter, has written up a really awesome article for the other 4 reprint previews that we have on EDHREC 2. So it's really exciting. Don't just check us out here. Check out the article content on EDHREC for the full preview season that we've got going on here. It's really exciting. Guys, we got some preview cards, and they are cool. They are all from the upcoming Jeskai Cycling deck, hence your joke from earlier, Dana. And you know what? I just can't wait. Let's get right to them. What is our first new preview card from Ikoria Commander?
The first new preview card we have is Dismantling Wave. It's a white card, 2 and a white for sorcery. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. And you may also cycle Dismantling Wave for 6 white. When you cycle Dismantling Wave, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. So remember the old Decree of Annihilation or Decree of Pain cycle from Scourge way back in the day? It kind of has a little sister card now.
Yeah, because they've got abilities when you cycle these cards, which is really, really cool. I quite like this one. It actually kind of strikes me as maybe the type of card that might even show up in non-dedicated cycling decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other cards we'll talk about are very much things you want to run only in a cycling deck. I don't think that's the case here. I think this is a pretty good card to run just as a value spell. I tend to look at targeted removal spells as either answers or a card that generates value. Instant speed ones are kind of answers in my head because they can solve a problem immediately. This as a sorcery spell is kind of something you're going to cast more for value most of the time, but that's a pretty good value generator. 3 mana to hit probably 3 different things.
Yeah, it sort of reminds you of a Lord Windgrace's Judgment a little bit.
Yeah, this is a perfect card. I mean, it scales incredibly well. The fact that it says each opponent is such a huge deal. It's always going to be a 3-for-1. I mean, you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find an opponent who doesn't have at least an artifact or an enchantment to take out. So it's very, very good value. I think it compares very nicely to, some cards like Grasp of Fate that scales to multiplayer games like Commander is, and Dismantling Wave does that. And it's such a great card, even if you never use the cycling ability.
Well, and the reality is Return to Dust is basically a sorcery speed spell anyway. I mean, yes, you can cast it as an instant for 4 mana on someone else's turn to hit 1 target, but you hate to do that. You usually want to do it main phase to hit 2 targets. Well, this is going to hit you 3 main phase for 1 less mana. It's a destroy, not an exile, but I think it compares pretty favorably to Return to Dust, and that's before you even get into cycling. So it's a really, really solid card all around, I think.
Yeah, and that cycling, remember, that can be done at instant speed, so you actually can catch the enchantment player completely off guard, and you'll draw a card for it. And even more important, cycling, this is a triggered ability that's being put onto the stack, so someone can't even use a regular counter spell to stop you from using that cycling trigger. They would have to have something like Stifle or Disallow to actually try and prevent that. That's what makes this really, really cool, very, very flexible. It's very interesting, and I like what you said there, Matt, about the way that it scales to multiplayer. That is definitely one of the ways that Wizards of the Coast this can help out white a whole lot in EDH is by having cards that scale to the number of opponents that you have, and this is a great example. I'd love to see more designs like this in the future for sure. But I'm actually most excited to get to our next card because this is the one that says Graveyard on it. I'm a Golgari player at heart, so the Jeskai Cycling deck is very confusing to me, but this is a card that makes me feel a little bit more at home. This is Herald of the Forgotten. Herald of the Forgotten is an 8-mana 6/6 cat beast with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you can return any number of target permanent cards with cycling abilities from your graveyard to the battlefield. Note, that does say that it has to be cast. It can't be flickered or reanimated or something like that. You do have to cast it, but it can be cast from anywhere, and you don't even necessarily have to pay its full mana cost. So if you have something like the Red's version of Impulse Draw, or if you cast it for free off of Omniscience or an Aminatu's Augury or some type of effect like that, you will still get that ability. So there are some pretty tricky things that you're still able to pull off with a card like this for sure.
Yeah, and it gets back any cycling ability. That includes land cycling, that includes... There's like one card with Wizard Cycling and one with Sliver Cycling, so, technically it gets those cards back also. It isn't doing stuff just cycle this turn, too. It isn't like a Faith's Reward or brought back kind of effect. It brings back just anything with cycling in your graveyard, regardless of when or how it got there.
Yeah, and it should be pointed out, too, that it only does get permanents back. It doesn't get back spells. You can't cast those from the graveyard with this. But we did a quick search of the most popular cards that have cycling on EDHREC. And here's a quick list of some highlights. So lands, holy lands, guys. Like 8 of the top 10 cards that have cycling are land cards. But then you do have some good heavy hitters. You have stuff like Cast Out, which is kind of the Oblivion Ring type of effect that has cycling. Cloud of Fairies gets you some lands to untap, helps out a little bit. Tectonic Reformation, that's not really so helpful, but Nimble Obstructionist, that's a great card. There are some good notable cards that you can get back with this. Decree of Silence is another one that's just going to annoy all of your friends. So yeah, there's some pretty important ones, and there's actually a few that will come back that are in the preview article that we have over on EDHREC.com.
Yeah, one of them that you can get back, one of the popular ones, is going to be a reprint that we'll be discussing in Angelo's article. But there's one cycling card there that you didn't mention, Matt, that is also decently popular that I think is important, is Lay Claim can also be brought back with this ability, which steals something from another person. I think that can be powerful, especially if you are getting back the Decree of Silence and Lay Claim. That can actually be a pretty big impact. This is an 8-mana card, so you want something really big. You probably don't want... I mean, you mentioned there's a lot of lands, like a lot of lands, and you don't want to spend 8 mana on what is effectively a splendid reclamation. You really want this to be like your big blowout. I'm going to win the game by bringing back so much stuff here. So I think that for this card to be like super powerful, amazing, this is going to win me the game, like it has the potential to do, one of two things probably has to happen. Either in the Jeskai deck that is coming out, there are going to be a bunch of amazing new cards and new things with cycling that you're able to get back with this that are super heavy hitters and will totally close things out if you're able to bring them back with the Herald. Or you actually build your deck around this card in a very different way, almost a little bit like the decks for Miss Angie Falconwrath, who plays a bunch of Madness cards sort of regardless of their Madness ability. She just wants to get a bunch of cards into her graveyard to reanimate a whole bunch of big stuff, and she doesn't really cast the Madness thing. She just discards, draws. And that might actually be something that you can take advantage of here. You might build your Jeskai Cycling deck using a bunch of really strange cards that you normally wouldn't play, stuff like Striped Riverwinder or Desert Ceradon, which probably wouldn't normally see play, but you are building with the Herald in mind, so you're putting a bunch of maybe subpar creatures into the graveyard so that you can bring them back out for one big full turn, sort of like the modern Living End deck, which is a personal favorite deck of mine. So that's probably the strategy that I'd be most interested in using for the Herald.
One negative here I will kind of note is, and we did mention this, but this is a card that really has to be in a cycling deck. So if you're not playing a deck that's very much built around cycling, this just isn't going to work probably for you at all. If you just happen to have 2 cycling cards in your deck, just coincidentally enough, it's just probably not playable. But in that cycling deck, it probably is going to have a pretty specific and effective role.
Yeah, it'll be a win condition in those cycling decks.
Yeah,
I like the cards that force you to commit really, really hard to a strategy, and this is definitely one of them. And so is our final preview card, which, Matt, I know you're the most excited about for sure.
I am, because this card could be anything. quite literally, it could be anything. So this card is Crystalline Resonance. It is 2 and a blue for an enchantment that reads, whenever you cycle a card, you may have Crystalline Resonance become a copy of another target permanent until your next turn, except it has this ability. What? This card, it literally can become anything. You cycle a card at instant speed, and then it just becomes a Blightsteel Colossus. It becomes a Gaia's Cradle. Anything that's on the board, this can become. And this is so cool.
It's like a dedicated cycling version of Mirage Mirror, only it keeps the ability to continue to transform. And this is something that I missed on the first reading. It keeps that new form, that clone ability. It becomes a copy until your next turn, not until the end of the current turn whenever you activate this. That's really big. There's a lot of trickery that you can do with this. This is a really great new addition to the cycle of 3 mana Cycling Matters enchantments like Astral Slide or Astral Drift and Lightning Rift, which all have like less than 1,000 decks according to EDHREC, and I totally think that this is going to top all 3 of them.
This should be in every single cycling deck.
Yeah, and the ability to reset it with cycling is a really big deal because you're not stuck holding it in your hand, waiting until you're at a point where you can cast that game-winning condition that you then copy with this. You can just cast this and copy, whatever incidentally happens to be the most valuable thing in play, knowing that you can cycle something later on and reset it to become a copy of that win condition.
Yeah, especially like if, for example, you're using a Psychosis Crawler as your dedicated win condition in your cycling deck because you're drawing so many cards, this can get you there twice as fast. And you can use it to have a combat trick and suddenly you have the best creature in play in case someone's swinging at you, and now you have got a fantastic blocker. This is a very, very versatile card, which makes it way more exciting.
Yeah, this is going to enable so many insane plays. Like you can cycle something to have this become a Soul Ring, and then you can tap that Soul Ring to cycle something else. Then you can have it become a land, and it's just impossible to remove. This is going to just be so crazy. I'm very excited about this card, and I don't even have a cycling deck.
Yeah, that is definitely the type of thing that we look for in preview cards for sure. We're not just excited; we're excited. Did that make sense? Probably not. I will stop. I will stop indeed.
Let the master do the joke.
Yes.
Master. One pro tip, because this Jeskai Cycling deck is looking to be really, really interesting. One pro tip, the most scary card for a Jeskai Cycling deck is easily going to be an enemy's Smothering Tithe because of how many cards you apparently are going to be drawing in this deck. So watch out for the Smothering Tithe triggers out there, folks. Definitely look out for those when you are committing to this amazing cycling deck. It's definitely something to watch out for. Those are our preview cards. Thank you again to Wizards of the Coast for these free previews. This is definitely looking to be a very, very interesting preview season and Commander product for sure. Remember to tune in to Angelo at the Jeskai on Twitter. You can check out his article on the main page on EDHREC to see the other 4 free preview cards that we have for EDHREC, to see what else is hiding in this Jeskai deck, other win conditions that you might be able to find in there. Definitely make sure to check that out. Enjoy the rest of preview season, everyone, and don't forget to EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.